And James André is back in Kyiv and joins us now live. James, good afternoon. What was really striking in that report when I first saw it was really how upbeat the soldiers you saw actually were.
Yes, absolutely. Soldiers are upbeat, and there's a good reason to that, and that is the fact that their weapon systems for now are being incredibly effective. A lot of soldiers told us about that famous video, because it is now famous, of that column of tanks that was pushed back. That was around Brovary. That was earlier on this week, when indeed these tanks came under heavy shelling by the Ukrainian forces, were hit by these anti-tank missiles and forced to retreat, and that was quite chaotic. Now, a lot of people have seen these videos and they all feel empowered to manage to hold this defense line. Now, I heard this morning that this defense line was actually 16 kilometers long. What we see in that report is only just a few hundred meters of it, but the armed forces of Ukraine have been working really hard to entrench themselves to defend the capital city, and they're doing a remarkable job, it has to be said. We also witnessed how a lot of volunteers are helping the soldiers out. We saw a man arrive with some food, another group of people arriving with plywood and beams in order to create new shelters, new bunkers, in order to fortify that line and to be able to hold it if indeed Russian tanks come back and try and force it. And that's for now not what we're seeing on the ground.
James, help us with the big picture. It appears that right now around Kyiv, Ukrainian defenses are actually holding steady.
For now, indeed, the defenses are holding, both on the northeastern side, that is on the side of Brovary, where indeed for now, well, the Russian tanks have not managed to crush through Ukrainian defenses, and it's the same on the northwestern side in Irpin, where there has been a lot of tension over the past few days, where there have been Russian advances, but according to media here, there's been a pushback by the Ukrainian forces, and for now, there again, the Russian tanks are not managing to enter Kiev itself. Now, what there has been in Kiev, though, is some shelling. This morning, a building was hit in Podil, that is in central Kiev. That is an upmarket district, and there, well, a flat was destroyed on the 16th floor. One person was killed, 19 people were injured. So there is also that constant psychological pressure here in central Kyiv. That is the fact that indeed Russian shells can fall at any moment and in any part of the city.
And you mentioned Ukrainian soldiers, but it's not just the armed forces. The war effort is also picking up among civilians in the capital.
Yes, absolutely. With our team, with Jonathan Walsh, we just spent some time with a Mitro. Mitro, for example, that's an example of what the stuff that's going on here. Mitro has a paint company that had 70 employees before the war, that had a turnover of 6 million euros, and that right now, of course, has come to a complete grinding halt. Now, what Mitro is doing is that he is using his company to try and help out civilians, to help out the armed forces as well. Now, for example, he is currently studying a way to produce homemade bulletproof vests for the volunteers on the front line and for the armed forces. Potentially, he's also importing medicine, importing food. The aid is being concentrated in his warehouses, and he's redistributing it. We also visited a school. This school has been changed into a shelter with the personnel from the school, for example, people usually cooking lunch for the kids, actually cooking now for these displaced people who pass by these shelters before they can make their way towards the western part of the country where things are better. And of course, there are all these stories, the stories of these people who are, suffering here in Ukraine. We spoke to Anna. She's one of these people running the shelter I was speaking to about just a few seconds ago. And Anna was telling us that her husband was fighting on the front line in the east. She couldn't tell us where exactly, but she said his battalion had been decimated by the Russians, that there were 40 men in the first place, only 4 left. Luckily, her husband is still alive, but she was telling us that with tears in her eyes.
France 24's James André reporting from Kyiv. Thank you for that, James.